in 2019, you guys put out your final album, Retaliation Vacation. I listened to your entire discography many times in preparation, and my favorite songs on that album are Straight to Hell, Speechless, and King Kong. You guys actually knew before recording that album, or at least before releasing that album, that would be your last. So was it a long time coming where you guys decided that you were going to part ways as a band?
Well, it was in the sense of we had all been, we've all had other creative endeavors and other jobs here and there, but this had been all of our main focus since we were all really darn young. So in that sense, it was a long time coming, but also I think a big part of it was just kind of getting out of the way. Not that we were taking up that much space necessarily, but just getting out of the way for that next generation of things, right? And I mean, I feel like by my expectations, when I was 18 and we started the band, at that point in time, it was like, hey, if I could ever have a month where I don't need to work another job and I can pay rent and eat food and play music, then that is success. And we did that, we did that at times. And I would think, oh, if I could go to some places that I've never been to, then that would be great. And we did that, and that felt like success. And if I could make a record or two where I really, really like the drum sound on it, or I really, really like just the songs, then that would be great. And we did that, and that felt like a success. So it's almost just like feeling so lucky and grateful with how things have gone, that it's not a matter of not wanting to tempt fate, but it's sort of just like, okay, this thing has gone really well. We're all good friends. And if we go out on our own terms, we can probably have this one sort of final super duper fun tour that, if anything, the attention will be maybe amplified a little bit if you say, hey, everybody, it's our final tour, right? In hindsight, COVID happened basically while we were playing our final shows. COVID-19 existed in the world and was starting to spread, right, as a virus. So in hindsight,
you picked a good time to retire.
Well, in a sense, right? I mean, if we had booked that final tour for March 2020 rather than, September to December 2019, it would have just been a huge bummer I mean, I don't even know what that would have looked like. But the reality was, in many ways, it felt like the right time. And I only have super duper fond memories of that entire 12, 13 year period. And I really only have super duper fond memories of that final 2019 tour. But it was something that we consciously talked about. And there was, Joel, there was a vibe within the band that as soon as we had come to this agreement that, okay, we're going to make this record, we're going to go on this tour, it was brilliant because everybody was just like, the pressure's off. The pressure's still on to play good shows, and the pressure's still on to have a nice time and make sure that, it all makes sense running a business, which, I want to roll my eyes at myself even saying that, but it is what you're doing when you have a band, right? If you're going on tour, you're running a business, whether you want to be or not. Money exists, whether it should or shouldn't, it does. Again, that's another conversation for a more political podcast, perhaps. But the idea of, I guess, ultimately the idea of like, okay, we need to do whatever it takes to keep being able to do this thing, that thing that I keep coming back to, that was almost like the spell was broken. And it's like, oh, okay, no, we can do this tour and really just live in the moment. And every night, I remember thinking like, oh, cool. This is like, it's sad that maybe this is the last time that I'm sitting behind a drum kit playing in Hamilton, in New York City, in Ottawa, in Montreal, in Halifax, whatever. But also like, I am here right now. And this is a really nice time. And I think, I think this song at least sounds all right. It's like, it really allowed you to live in the moment. And I think that that's something that really would have been lost if we had not. It's not that ending the band was the right choice. It's that continuing on with no vision for the future would have been the wrong one. And yeah, that's basically it. That's really it. Yeah.
Yeah, you speaking about that, it reminds me of when I hear that, death allows you to appreciate life. Like if you
Yeah.
lived an infinite amount of years, life wouldn't be precious, because why would you do anything today when you know you have infinity to do it, So
Right. Yeah.
that time limit actually puts, grounds you in the present. And it sounds like that's kind of, the death of the band, or the ending of that band or that relationship, made you enjoy the present, knowing this isn't going to be forever.
Yeah. And that's a life lesson that, I mean, that's huge, right? And are you into stoicism at all? I'd imagine you probably are.
I actually just finished a couple books about it. Yeah,
Right. Yeah.
Ryan Holiday is like
Yeah.
known
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
like the main guy. So I finished one of his books, and there's letters from Seneca, I guess, is like one of the main. So I just finished reading that too. Yeah.
I could find it. I keep a copy of Letters from a Stoic, the Seneca, whatever it's called. I keep a hardback copy of that, just like somewhere. And every now and then I'll pick it up and read from it. I've brought that book on tour, and just when you're having a hard time, feeling anxious, whatever, just like pick up a passage, even at random, and just read it and be like, okay, yeah. But yeah, a big Stoic philosophy thing is Memento Mori, right? Remember that you're going to die. And if you do that every day, even though there's a morbid, sad element to that, it reminds you, first of all, any hardships that you're facing, any difficulties that you're facing are really just minor by comparison. And secondly, and more importantly, you realize, okay, you have a finite amount of time. So you really should be doing the things that you want to be doing with the people that you want to be spending time with. And obviously you need to do things you don't want to do. That's life. But really your aim should be towards doing the things you want to do with the people that you want to spend time with. And really, yeah, in a weird way, I think it would have helped me if I was 18 or 19 or 20 or 25 to say, hey, this band will end at some point. Just relax, just relax a little bit.
Hey, take it easy.
Hey, take it easy. Like just have a fun time, have a nice time, because it sometimes, whatever you're doing, it can feel like you're not doing enough, or you're not working hard enough, or you're working too hard. We overthink things like crazy. And just sort of keeping in mind the finite nature of our experience as human beings is super important, to just kind of just relax a little, right? Doesn't matter ultimately.
I have some kind words sent in from Chelsea Miller from Live 88.5 radio host, radio DJ. She says, I met Jake when he was sitting behind the kit for Hollerado. He's an amazing musician, funny, humble, and just all around nice guy. He's also a dog lover of running. And every time I see him, he's always so welcoming. Please say hi to him for me. That's Chelsea Miller.
Yeah, she's such a sweetheart. That's amazing. I mean, honestly, listening to her on the radio is one of the greatest joys of living in the city again. And I mean, obviously, I've got a deep connection with that station because they helped us out, and we were in their contest, and we played a ton of their events and whatever. But even just hearing a familiar face, hearing a familiar voice, but that she is somebody that as soon as you hear her voice, it's like you can picture her speaking. There's such personality in what she does. Jen as well. I mean, these guys are fantastic.
A few months ago, so at the start of this, I mentioned a few months ago you were the special guest performer at an open mic. I have a question sent in from that host. So this is from Mike Lamonde. He wants to know, do you prefer the more settled down 9-to-5 life you have now versus the crazy touring days?
I mean, it's so apples and oranges. I feel really happy these days. There were periods of time touring and living a more chaotic lifestyle that I felt really happy as well. I think I'm only realizing now how difficult for me it actually was to maintain a heavy touring traveling lifestyle and any modicum of positive mental health whatsoever. So it's such apples and oranges. And also, I don't think, if I had just sort of settled into a calm life at 20, I wouldn't have appreciated. I think I appreciate what I'm doing now because of those years. And I think maybe to a certain extent, something that kept me going those years was sort of the idea of like, okay, this is when I would remember this, okay, this is temporary. You know, this isn't just a given that you're just going to be traveling 200 days a year. This is atypical for anyone, right? There's a pretty small amount of people, especially nowadays in this economy, that travel that much for work, right? So yeah, to answer your question, I don't know.
That's a good answer. I'm going to share my screen one last time for a picture.
Yeah.
So this is you guys playing at the Air Canada Centre in Toronto. My question is, what is the biggest show you've ever played? And what was it like to play to a crowd of that size? So this picture.
Wait a second. I'm not in this photo.
No, I know, but you're in there.
I know.
I recognize the three band members, but there were pictures of you, but you couldn't see how big the crowd was. So I chose this one.
This is the Air Canada Centre.
Air Canada Centre in Toronto. Yeah. This is a reference for our viewers to see how big some of the shows are. So what was the biggest show, and what is it like playing to a crowd like that?
Okay, well, we once did a festival in, I can't even remember what city in China. And that was a crowd that was smaller than this crowd is in that picture. But that crowd felt to me, and still in my memory, when I think, what's the biggest show that we ever played? I think of that festival in China in 2009, because at that point, the biggest crowd we'd ever played in front of was whatever, 500 or 600 or 1,000 people or something. And this was like 4,000 or 5,000 people. So that immediately comes to mind. And Kevin Lamb was a photographer, really, really good guy. Just a little shout out to him. He took that photo of the Air Canada Centre. But big shows, especially on the drums, there's no room for subtlety. You know, that idea you were talking about, Glenn from Blue Rodeo, realizing when he first joined the band, he was just playing like everything really big. When you're playing drums, if you're playing to big audiences like that, there's no room for little subtle fills or little dynamic things or little like it's got to be like big. And I think anytime we were playing in front of big audiences, which in my mind is anything more than 1,000, if you're somebody that really played in a big act, maybe you think a big crowd is more than 10,000, but I would always think, okay, make sure I'm just really consistent and really playing good and hard, really, really playing loud. I want everyone to be able to hear that backbeat of the snare drum, because really the idea is I want everyone to be able to follow that. Yeah. And I would really focus on just heavy, loud consistency. And really, there was we didn't do it that often, but when we were usually opening and playing in front of big audiences, I would almost always just kind of go like, wow, holy shit, like, wow, okay, this is pretty cool. That being said, there are some amazing musical moments that you can have in front of 20, 30, 50 people as well, right? But yeah, I think it was always like, okay, focus on consistency and even tempo and playing really damn loud. And which is weird because the drums are being mic'd and they're coming through these massive PA speakers, but it's almost like, okay, I want to make sure everyone hears this in the back, even like,
yeah, this song is for the people in the back,
like, I don't, it's sort of silly. And there's so many things that you realize in hindsight, like, oh, my thinking there didn't really make sense. And a lot of that is because I was, 24, 25, 26 at the time. It doesn't take much growing older to realize how silly you kind of were 4, 5, 6, 10 years ago,
Yeah. Someone that knows a thing about live events is concert promoter Craig Laskey from Collective
Yeah.
Concerts. So
Yeah.
he sent in the following words. He says, I have always loved working with Jake over the years with Hollerado. He is a
Oh,
fantastic drummer and more importantly, a great person. I miss seeing him play in Hollerado or out at shows since moving back to Ottawa. That's from Craig.
yeah. I mean, I would have a really hard time calculating, and I mean calculating, not just counting. It's like I would need to get an abacus out if I wanted to count up the amount of shows that I've either been at or played that Craig Laskey was the promoter. And I mean, so many, like, geez, I want to say Colorado's 13th or 14th show, something like that. He was a promoter. It was really, really early on that he was involved in terms of promoting what we did in Toronto. And yeah, really nice guy also.